On the podcast today, we are going to speak about when the Kali Yuga began, how it will finish, and if we are in the Kali Yuga right now. And so when we are speaking about the Kali Yuga today, we are speaking about the original system found in the Puranas. We are not speaking about Sri Yukteswar's short count system. We're talking about the long count system, this vast system of knowledge, and we're focusing on the Kali Yuga. So you and I were not interested in making up our own version of the Yugas, which has become popular these days. And so we are speaking about the actual knowledge of the Yugas, okay? So, and you don't have to believe in the Yugas. Just a little disclaimer for everyone. You don't have to believe in the Yugas, but we are here to speak about it objectively because we are adults, and whatever we believe, it doesn't matter. We're speaking about it objectively, and so our own personal opinions and bias are going to be put to the side. So when we talk about the Yugas, like the whole idea of the Yugas came from Vyasa. So we find the Yugas mainly in the Vishnu Purana and Bhagavata Purana, and Vyasa, the great sage Vyasa, is responsible for writing many of the great scriptures in Hinduism. So the Puranas, the Tantras, the Mahabharata, which is very important when we talk about the Kali Yuga, right? The Mahabharata, because of Krishna. And so the idea here is that the Kali Yuga began in 3102 BCE, because that's when Krishna departed the world to what is called, the heavenly abode of Vaikuntha in Hinduism. Now, a lot of people in some of the translations will say Krishna died, or Krishna just, departed the world, because God can't die, right? Mm-hmm. But Krishna in the story is an incarnation of Vishnu. Yeah. So Krishna is actually the 8th avatar of Vishnu. It's really interesting because there's 10 avatars. The 10th hasn't come. We'll speak about that later. But it's interesting that when you study those avatars, it kind of lines up with also the evolution of the human species, which is a whole other topic, because the 7th avatar is Rama, the 9th avatar, Gautama the Buddha, according to Hindus. But that's a whole other side topic. But so Krishna departed the world, and that began the decline of the human species. This is a whole different cosmology, right? And this is what fascinated scientists like Carl Sagan. Like, he was extremely fascinated with the Yugas, and he spent a lot of time studying the Yugas and this idea. See, the idea of the Yugas is built on the day and night of Brahma. So the day of Brahma is 4.32 billion years, and a day and night of Brahma is did I say million or billion? It's billion. 4.32 billion years, and a day and night of Brahma is 8.64 billion years. So this is an idea of one kalpa, and then and within this are these 4 yugas. So you have the golden age of the Satya Yuga, you have Treta Yuga, you have Dwapara Yuga, and then you have the Dark Age, which is actually the shortest in time span. So we're talking about 332,000 years. Not very short it's long for us, but short in the greater perspective. So that's the idea, right? So the idea is to set a platform for everyone listening, is that's when it began. So 432,000. What did I say?
3,032.
Oh, did I say? 432,000 years. Yeah. So to set that framework for people. So and that apparently began with the departing of the world of Krishna. Whether you believe that story is pure mythology or is real, but it's based around a war in Kurukshetra in northern India. So there was a war in Kurukshetra, and it's depicted in the Mahabharata, particularly in the Bhagavad Gita section of the Mahabharata, and where you see the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, and so that's kind of what set the stage, and so the Puranas and the Tantras and the Mahabharata and all of this, Vyasa had wrote for us in the Dark Age, because his belief in the decline of consciousness.
that war that happened back in the time could be true, but the death of Krishna could be something like metaphorical thing too, as in Krishna consciousness.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And
The death of Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. So that then, yeah, like you said, the decline of humanity.
Of humanity, yeah. That's a good point, love. And it's, well, the idea is that the consciousness in the Kali Yuga is not as capable of understanding the spiritual truths and the spiritual reality of the universe, because the idea in the Kali Yuga is that our mind is kind of engrossed with the material world. So our mind is entangled in the material world, and we don't turn within. Only a few, and that's why these texts are there, right? That's why Vyasa left these texts behind, because for those who are spiritually starved in the Dark Age and who still have a spiritual inclination, need to turn back within because you understand the truth. And I guess that, it doesn't matter whether you want to believe the Yugas or not, but what we could say is true in the modern day, and has been the case for a few thousand years, is the fascination with the material world, as opposed to like a fascination with our inner world, which was obviously a focus of the yogis and the sadhus and the Taoist sages and that thousands of years ago.
So according to that cycle, we are still going
Way
decline.
Down. We're way down. Yeah, we're not even starting.
We're not.
We're already at the start.
Because
if you think about it, it's 432,000 years,
and then
it only began in 3,102 BCE.
Nowhere near.
Nowhere near.
Like in time wise, like we are like in 2 minutes in. It would be
only just
something
starting.
like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Only just starting. Yeah, 2 minutes of the hour. Only just starting. Yeah, according to the Yugas. Yeah. So, as I said, you don't have to believe that, but we need to speak about this because this is some of the great Hindu knowledge, and so and like some things that are very interesting, and why Carl Sagan was interested in it, because like when you look at one kalpa, for example, 4.32 billion years, like Sagan was fascinated about that because it's almost the time, the life of the earth. So there's a lot of this knowledge. There's a lot of this knowledge that
whole yuga.
Well, the 4.32 billion years is like, give or take, from what people believe is like the age of the earth. So like,
Since the birth of
birth of the planet. So you have a lot of this cosmology, Hindu cosmology that lines up with actual science. And so that's what really fascinated Carl Sagan about it. Whether you want to believe that there was a Satya Yuga, a golden age before, and also Dwapara and all of that before this time, is up to you. But one of the hallmarks of the Kali Yuga is this kind of forgetting. You know what I mean? Like there's a forgetfulness, like, and we're trying to remember something, but there's something missing, right? Like we're all trying to remember. There's something about reality that we don't quite understand. We miss the point, so to speak. So we use science and we use all the philosophy and everything to try and
get the memory back.
Get the memory back and make sense of what's going on here. Because apparently in the Satya Yuga, as you know, is that like your consciousness was attuned to Brahman, the actual reality, the one reality. So you lived in a state of unity and oneness without this idea of duality. Look, there's separate life forms, obviously, but the consciousness was at a unified level. But in the Kali Yuga, obviously, it's not. It's at a very distorted level, and when you live, well, as we know, everyone knows through watching our podcast, is that when you live from that state of duality, you constantly, from that distorted perception, you're constantly dissecting the world into this dual nature.
Yes. Yeah, we start looking outside much more than within ourselves.
Yes.
And that leads to extreme materialism.
Exactly. And that's what's happening right now, right?
And another thing could be something like that. We are like living in an age of the explosion of population, right? And then obviously, if there are more people on the planet, there's more like the world becomes more complex, and it can be complicated at times because everyone thinks differently. And there's 7.5 billion different perspectives of life and of the world, so that brings more problem than not, I guess, right?
Definitely. Well, it seems like that's part of the Kali Yuga, right? Like the population explosion, the diversity of opinions and beliefs, and the lack of spiritual awareness of our fundamental unity to one another is kind of polluted through so many different views and opinions, and people are unfortunately influenced by other people who have a lack of knowledge, and also institutions who have a lack of knowledge. And then we go down this rabbit hole, right? Like where, you know, if the ones above you, and you know, in a social setting, have a lack of knowledge, then the chances you're going to have a lack of knowledge is pretty high, because they're just communicating to you the same nonsense that, you know, that they believe to you. So then, you know.
So it's quite interesting because we are in just the beginning of Kali Yuga, and so okay, if that's the case, it's like no matter how hard let's say individuals come together and try to make the world better and respect the others and bring light to the humanity, then if that's if that's the Kali Yuga system, then like it's kind of inevitable. The decline of the humanity is somewhat like a not preventable sort of thing.
It's a good point, love. I get a lot of comments actually because of the documentary on the Yugas I made, actually from a lot of Indians that will say, it doesn't matter what you want to do, it doesn't matter, like it's going down no matter what. So personally, like if you are attuned to the higher consciousness, then you just do your work and allow the process of nature, so to speak, to run its course.
Yeah.
Which in this case means, you know, the decline of intelligence, the decline of like spiritual awareness. So we just gotta sit back and watch the circus unfold, you know.
It's I mean, it sounds maybe a little bit funny, but it somewhat gives you kind of a bit of a relief, to be honest.
You don't have to be a martyr and try and save humanity.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to be too like let down, and you don't have to be too gloomy, doom and gloom about it. If that's the course of nature, then just let the nature to do its thing, and like you said, you just live your small part of your life, and
it's just Kali consciousness. What's all that nonsense going out there? It's just Kali consciousness. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Just concentrate on your own spiritual path, spiritual work.
That's right.
Yeah. But I think that it's important. Well, look, the whole idea is that Vyasa wouldn't leave behind these texts if he wasn't concerned, right? For, like, I guess his concern would be the sustainability of the human species.
And I mean, no matter what, like, whether that's majority or minority, that the spiritual inclined people have always been existed, I think.
Yeah, of course.
That is why in Yuga it's cyclical. When there is descent, there is ascend. So that there must be some seed left behind for it to grow, right?
Yep.
So that it's just a matter of whether that's a majority or minority. Or you could say that even in the Satya Yuga, time of Satya Yuga, there might be only like a small minority of people who are really knowledgeable in the spiritual path. But in general, majority of people live in harmony with each other. So that the level of consciousness was more, like you said, unified instead of diverted. So that Yeah, it might be still might be a minority of people who are knowledgeable in this path, but the majority of people's consciousness were at a kind of different level.
Yeah.
Could be something like that too.
I think so. Well, I think that the way that the cycle would work is that in Satya Yuga, everyone is kind of awake, and then as it descends, slowly, it thins out, and people become more attracted to the material world, right?
Yeah.
Like you see this sort of knowledge with Treta Yuga, where that's kind of the second enlightened stage, but you see that there's already a turning away from this unified state of consciousness, where this duality kind of slips under the door, and then as we go down through Dwapara and Kali, then it's kept alive through, you and I and people listening and watching here, and anyone who's interested in this sort of knowledge. So if you believe the Yuga system. So that's why they say in the Puranas that around the time of before Dwapara turns into Kali, there's always someone like Veda Vyasa comes along to
leave
something behind, so that when we pass through the Kali Yuga, that remembering and that's still there. So when we go back through, actually in the older on the long count system, you go straight from Kali Yuga to Satya Yuga, so it doesn't go like the Yukta Swa one. So once you get through that, then there's this. You go into the golden age, you know what I mean? But it has to be kept alive in somehow, right? And in this sense, in this Kali Yuga, then it's kept alive through the Puranas, the Tantras, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, and all of these sorts of texts. Even if you want to branch outside of that, even like through the Nikayas and Buddhism and Tao Te Ching and Taoism and Zhuangzi, and because all of this is kind of similar in that sort of time frame. Maybe not 3102 BCE, which is actually a time that's disputed between scholars, because a lot of them believe it was about
a bit before.
Yeah, 1500 BCE. Like they're probably saying not further.
Later.
They're not saying it's that old, but I wouldn't say that to a Hindu, because like the authority says it's that time, and you got to sometimes take it as the way it is, right? So if there's no evidence that can dispute that, so to speak, so you'd only have scholars disputing that out of their own mindset, right? So so basically that's kind of like that sort of cyclical, like you said. And I think that especially in the Dwapara, in the Kali Yuga, the spiritually inclined people are a minority. Like if you look at the system as it is, like the Treta Yuga is just coming out of the Satya. Then there'd still be more spiritually inclined people, but then you move into Dwapara, and then things become more attractive, right? Like we want to explore the biology and the nature of the stars and this and that, when probably in the Satya Yuga, who knows, we probably already knew all that stuff anyway. It's just like second-hand knowledge.
Yeah, we never know. Like people in the Satya Yuga already knew, just kind of that, just a given knowledge, and they knew something heightened level.
Exactly.
Things, yeah.
Well, if you're attuned to Brahman, right? Like what's more...
That's right.
If you live in that state of consciousness, you know the nature of reality itself. I mean, understanding how a microphone works is no need.
Yeah, it's kind of petty knowledge that you think it's important and things like that.
Yeah. Only important for our podcast. Yeah, so that's basically like the kind of that idea, right? Like because we've moved into Kali Yuga, we start to have this gravitational pull towards the external world, which then makes us believe we start to live from a sense of security of ourselves, because it starts then to build this sense of self, this sense of ego. And then what becomes important in the Kali Yuga, who I am, my assets, how I'm influencing other people, status, all of these things that are built on a dualistic mind, as opposed to a unified mind. Where a unified mind or a holistic mind doesn't really they are not things that are even part of the comprehension of a holistic mind, because your state of consciousness is already holistic. It's in sync with other people and the world in general.
I think from that consciousness, I don't think there is such thing as like a self-identifying, like who you are type of a concept.
No.
I don't think, because that itself is coming from dualistic mind, isn't it? Like there is no need of identity. You don't have to verify yourself by something external, something outside of you, right? Because it's unified consciousness. Like what you have is what I have, what I don't have, what you don't have, kind of thing. Like there is all this oneness in the mind.
In the mind,
right?
Because you don't have an awareness of duality from that state. It's funny that, because when you have a dualistic mind, you don't have an awareness of oneness. But when you're in oneness, you don't have an awareness of duality. It doesn't exist for you. It's funny that it's both the opposite side of the coin.
Yeah. So then, like, there is no need of any conflict, no dispute, because that wouldn't come to even horizon of thoughts, because it has no meaning to them.
No meaning.
Yeah.
Everything's one from that perspective, from that unified state. Like, so there's no like me, you, someone listening, this and that. And let's be clear, it's more of a sense of unity. It's not like you see everything as one. It's a sense of unity in your heart and within your own state of mind. That's your mode of awareness. So your mode of awareness is not like in a dualistic sort of habit of like, what can I gain from you? How can I influence these people, so forth and so on. So
from that place, again, like there wouldn't be any need for such thing as government either.
No.
Because government itself is coming from dualistic model of thinking, and based on control and ruling people, right? Like how can you think ruling and controlling people from unified consciousness? It doesn't exist.
There's no need.
Because unified consciousness itself is the governing everything in harmony. Like we would do all the right thing for other people, and if someone is in trouble, it's helping them out. Is not to think of anything that I'm doing a good thing because that's what you do, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's why, like, I was going to mention Melchizedek's work, but he's kind of not like for example, like, you know, the idea of the Aboriginals, the 44 and 2 chromosomes, and then we're at 46 and 2 chromosomes with a disharmonic state, where the Aboriginals were living in a unified state of consciousness, and then as we evolved, but it's almost like in some sense that the Western state of mind is like built on this kind of dualistic model, and the older cultures, for example, were all built on this kind of unified state of mind, state of consciousness, where like the idea of duality doesn't slip under the door, because that's just not your mode of awareness, you know. And I know that Melchizedek example that I said, like, you know, think about him what you will, but like the idea is that we're going to step into like a 48 and 2 chromosome, like a Tool song, right? 46 and 2. So 48 chromosomes, sorry, not 48 and 2. So 48 chromosomes, so we're going to step into that. But yeah, you don't have to take that serious, but it's that knowledge is out there. But there is this thing especially in Eastern thought, where the mentality, like the thing is in the Kali Yuga, which is very which represents actually the Aboriginal people of Australia and also older Indigenous people and shamanic cultures and so forth, is this idea of the simple life. And so a lot of people think about like the Satya Yuga, that there's like buildings and like we're flying spacecrafts around and it's like, you know, like it's like this. But the idea in Hinduism is that life is very simple. So it would have been like you and me just living on a farm, a couple of little rugrats running around, and we know the neighbors, and it's very like organic and holistic, and like there was not like mine is yours and this and that, even though the human dynamic still exists, but there was not, like you said, no need for a government, because the life was, you were in harmony with life. And so the only time we need a government, right, is when the state of consciousness becomes dualistic.
Yes.
And then
when we are not in harmony with each other, then we need a third party to
intervene. Exactly. But it is that way, right? Like, it's that way. Like, if you don't have a government now, if you look at all the madness going on in the world at the moment,
it'll be really total out of control.
So, anarchy, So that's kind of a byproduct of dualistic state of consciousness. Like, if the mind's becoming more dualistic in the people, then a government is a natural byproduct, and police and everything is a natural byproduct, because you are out of your mind, essentially. You're not thinking with your right mind.
But then when you see the world of today, like, let's say, security cameras everywhere on the street, out in the open, the public, and if the hierarchies want to, they can track your everyday life, literally what you do, even what time you went to the bathroom, and
size of your underwear and
everything, like
yeah.
what you like and what you dislike and these kind of things. And it's at a stage, I personally think the stage of like over-governing.
Yeah,
things.
of course, yeah.
So if birth of government was to be born from dualism, pure dualism, over-governing is going much further than that. I personally think that it's against privacy.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of an accepted norm in the name of security, right? And if we are that scared of our life in general, then it's gone to the stage that's quite serious, isn't it? Like, we can't trust anything, you can't trust anyone, and some like big events, bombing and things like that happened, and whether that's set it up or it was organically happened, what happened, and that got people to accept the laws to have cameras on the street and things like that, and it was never like that.
Yeah.
And now it became a thing that like people kind of accepted. That's the level of insecurity we all have, and I think that shows a lot, and that how much we don't trust others.
Yeah. Well, it becomes background noise, doesn't it? Like you said, all the cameras and all of that, and all of the privacy issues, especially online and stuff like that, where Google can trace everything that you do and stuff like that, which is actually just against your general human rights. But that's Kali consciousness, right? That's people don't trust each other, and then that paranoia is filtrated into the government and the police systems and this and that. So then they don't trust the population, and so once they don't start trusting the population, they're putting cameras up everywhere, and then the tech companies don't trust you, so they're tracing your every movements to, not just to trace what you're doing, but to make money from you.
That's right.
With clever algorithms and this and that. So it's all used against you for someone else's self-interest.
Yeah, that's the result of it all. Even you see all different type of platforms of the social media, right? Like, I mean, all these social media platforms have its own reason and function behind it, and people feel that they have a sense of freedom to express themselves, whether that's through pictures or through just a short post or It could be their own little piece of music or something like that. And it's out there for anyone to express themselves and make it public for everybody can see, so that individual can feel the sense of fulfillment or achievement or something like that. Yeah. But in saying that, you are voluntarily giving information about you out there.
Yeah.
And anyone can use your personal information whichever way they want. Not necessarily going to be for you, can be against you.
Yeah.
And majority of people believe that having lots of different social media platforms is a good thing, and they would defend it, right? And again, Kali consciousness is not only thinking a dualistic model. I guess this is what included in the Kali Kali consciousness, but people become less intelligent as well. Like because people start to identify themselves from outside, influence so much, they stop thinking for themselves.
Yes.
So that we lose a faculty of thinking for ourselves.
Yeah.
Is this the right thing? Is this the wrong thing for ourselves? Is this beneficial for me or not? And even giving a chance to think about it.
Yeah.
So there's a very lack of thinking critically on things at times. Not all the time, but at times we need to be able to keep things in different perspectives so that we can come up with some more beneficial and healthy thoughts for ourselves and others.
Well, it's decline like our podcast on the buddhi, right? So like the buddhi is not developed, it's not enhanced, and it just begins to shrink like a dried, dried fruit, like an apricot.
Yeah, there's no life anymore.
There's no life in it anymore, yeah. So, and like you said, because that's driven by, you are being influenced by the external world, as opposed inquiring into your own nature and finding your own thing, so to speak. Like in Taoism, they talk about the Li, right? Your own organic pattern. Your own organic pattern can't be found from exploring the Twitter feed. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And so we've become a world of watchers and not readers, right? So that symbolizes instantly a decline in intelligence, and in a very short span of time too, because the idea of watching screens and that hasn't been around for so long.
That's right.
How's it going to be in 100 years' time from now? Is going to be a big problem, right? I'm assuming reading will just be an old pastime that those dinosaurs did back in the day. So, that we see that decline in intelligence. Like people, again, don't even think with common sense anymore. They have these postmodernist ideas and all of these idiotic views that are infectious ideas that are promoted by certain institutions and other people who have a certain agenda and something else that they want to push. It's not based on common sense. And so this again goes into Kali consciousness, where you can't think about things critically. Like a lot of the videos that we do here, like where we speak a lot objectively about things as philosophers, and a lot of people get angry and this and that, and it's like, but we're just speaking about it objectively. Like, why do you always have to have an opinion and a bias or an agenda when you speak about things? And again, everyone's been subtly influenced by this opinionated view of the West, particularly America, where you ought to have an opinion and this and that. Opinions are poison. If you're a highly opinionated person, you are likely very tired in a level of consciousness. You're asleep. You're not awake, because the more opinions you have, the less likely it is that you know anything about what you're talking about. So, and this is, again, it's still part of Kali consciousness. And so there are just fundamental truths about the world that are non-negotiable, that even those are for sale. You know what I mean? Like for example, only women can bear children. We all know that. But then, postmodernist dumbass ideas come in, and then next minute, you have to talk about in mythology then, like, oh, but someone gave birth in this mythological story. It's like, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, but then they say, oh, but biology doesn't exist. And it's like, okay, then this conversation's over. So, you know what I mean? But that's the level of intelligence that we've got to. So, and is that a result of Kali consciousness? Well, I hope not, because we're only at the beginning of the Kali Yuga. If it is, then who knows what it would be like, say, 200,000 years' time from now.
You can say, like, again, this is by fact that our life became a whole lot better than, let's say, 500 years ago.
Yeah.
There
More convenient.
More convenient. There is more awareness of like killing and murdering and
Yeah, for sure.
things like that. And whereas back in the day, people would die like going out of fashion, like a war happened every second.
Cheap.
Life was cheap. Yes, that's right. And there's not enough advanced medical centers and things like that, so that people would die at a very young age with just a simple flu, which could be fixed by just a little antibiotics today and things like that. So you can say that our daily life became much more advanced than back in the day.
Yeah.
But when you look at the, I don't know, consciousness, I'm not so sure. Maybe, okay, 500 years ago, human mind and now, I would think that people were much more innocent back in the day. And they were much more thinking in a way that matter of fact.
Yeah.
But now is, again, in saying your like postmodernism and things like that, because we depend on the outside influence so much, like public security cameras and social medias and whatnot become like a thing that's molding our behavior and thinking. Back in the day, I don't think that ever happened.
Didn't happen, yeah.
But publicly, these things are going on so that it influences every single individual today.
Yep.
And it molds people in certain way and to behave and think. Like, so instantly, if you put a picture or a post on the social media, you would get either criticized or get praise, and that's molding you.
Yeah.
To behave certain way. If you get criticized, I shouldn't do that. I mean, you will defend yourself, obviously, but it does something to you subconsciously, and it's molding you in a way. It preventing you from having your honest, authentic thoughts. Of the things.
Being genuine.
Yeah. So that's a big threat to me, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
And I see that, like people around you get to see everyday basis or not, they are changing, and whatever they see on the news, that influence people in the way they think, kind of almost instantly. So that we kind of breed people who are disingenuous, and also disingenuous to themselves and very unsteady. Very you know how people think this way today and tomorrow different, and yesterday was different.
They're all over the shop.
Yeah, very unsteady in their mind, and you don't know who you are really dealing with. No. And that's became very common in almost every individual today.
Well, look at that. Just have a look. Like a lot of people who are watching us probably don't know this, but we know this because we work with YouTube, is that there's the algorithm, right? So this is kind of elaborates a bit more on what you're saying. So there's the algorithm. And so if you're interested in making banana smoothies, this is your content, right? So you're adding cardamom, you're changing up the recipes and this and that. But then, one day you want to show you want to show some of the things that also you're interested in. You're interested in train sets, for example.
What?
Train sets, like toy train sets.
Train sets.
Yeah. Well, my great uncle he had anyway, longer story, a massive, train set. But then you put that on the channel and it gets like 2 views. And so what is happening here? Exactly what you were talking about. The algorithm and what the platform wants is shaping the way people are. And you see that all of these YouTubers are creating content to suit the algorithm, but it doesn't suit who they are. So the longevity of that is minimal. Unless they start making millions of dollars, and then they'll just sell their soul to keep making the money, right? A lot of people ask you and I about my channel, why don't you get, only some videos get a lot of views and this and that. It's because we don't follow the algorithm. Like, we create the content that we are inspired about. And so that's why we have podcasts on this channel. We have my shorter videos and we have documentaries. They're all on the one channel. If they were all separate, maybe they would do better on their own channel. But that's like, you'd have to have like 5 or 6 people working for you to achieve any of that. So we keep it simple. And so we're not bending to what a machine is going to tell you how to behave. But everyone is doing this these days, right? So the algorithms and the social media are telling people and informing people how they should behave, because that's how they will make money. That's how they will get a financial return. This is terrible. There actually should be some sort of thing against, like YouTube and that, having these sorts of algorithms. They say it's for an act of convenience, and it's like, no, it's not. That you're after profit, and you're also molding content creators a certain way, which actually causes some sort of mental health problems with them, because he may or she may want to concentrate on train sets, but the algorithm's saying stick to banana smoothies. You know what I mean? And it's like, and
that person would keep making smoothies,
and inside they're dying. They're like, I just love trains, but the algorithm's telling me that I'm only going to get a financial return with smoothies. And that's the nature of that's the nature of the world at the moment. So that's sort of, I'm just trying to accentuate your point of that it's even more subtle now, the external influence through social media and stuff like that. And as you were saying, like 500 and something years ago, our immediate environment we didn't know what was happening on the other side of the world. So we only had immediate concerns, right? Like of what was here and of what was in your immediate environment. So the influence from the external world was minimal. So, because first of all, look, survival was, paramount importance for most people. We got to make sure we got to eat every day. But then if you lived in a community where everyone sort of knew each other and this and that, and everyone helped each other out, which is how we evolved, then it was very harmonious. Obviously there were disputes, and like life was cheap for some people. But in general, most people aren't murderers and most people aren't psychopaths, right? So, but then as we've continued our evolution through the Kali Yuga, we see that the external influence gets more subtle and more complex, which then riddles our mind and strangles our mind into submission, where we become these lifeless robots walking around being influenced by external information. You should buy this new advertisement pops in, you should buy that. And you don't know how to think for yourself anymore.
And I think this is happening as well, that like let's say for example, like us too, we're not either supporting in a political sense left or right. No. But nowadays, each agenda is divided so clearly, and so their own opinion and way of thinking is so different and distinct, so that people who come from certain angle can only judge other people by being left or right, or whatever opinion other people have, right? But for example, you and I, we don't really
we don't like we're not into politics.
Yeah, and when they talk about progressiveness of things, and we would say, it depends on the situation, or you need to look more into it. It's not black and white kind of thing. That's how we would start the conversation. But then then other person will be confused as hell, they are completely, what we're talking about, it's completely over their head. They have no idea what we're trying to say, because because people purely come from this or that. Do you support Biden or do you support Trump? I have no opinion.
I don't even know
first
them.
Of all, yes, I don't know them, and
I know what the media tell me. And are they trustworthy?
Exactly. This is what I mean. But people just blindly following whatever they get told, and that molds their own opinion, and that opinion actually becomes a truth to them. So that individuals like us up here, for example, then they confuse the hell out of it, you know.
Oh, they just start calling you a libertarian, and it's like, no, I'm not a libertarian either. I said, what are you? I'm not interested. That's all. And usually, what happens is that if you say you're neither left or right, the left will say, oh, you must be right.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, that's exactly actually what I meant.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Yeah.
And but this is how, again, this is the insanity of sort of the Kali consciousness, right? Like, where the left will say that they're progressive, but it's not progressive, and then they will say that they're anti everything, but they are actually what they are saying. You know, so they might say they're, you know, anti-racist, but they themselves are racist.
Actually more racist.
They're actually more racist, right? So, you know, obviously a lot of progressive people don't like Hindus, they don't like white people and all this sort of thing.
Again, like this thing that you told me, that how one of the feminist movement person saying that how the darker skinned lady didn't get raped over other different color skin people. It's because that person didn't find her attractive.
Yeah, no,
You
it's
know what I
ridiculous.
mean?
Yeah,
Like,
it's ridiculous.
That's pretty.
Yeah.
That's just insane.
You're insane. Yeah, you're insane.
So you are promoting that she
you're
should
promoting
get raped.
rape. Yeah, exactly. We don't even.
That's a kind of a extreme example of Kali consciousness, isn't it? Like,
oh my god.
I was speechless.
Oh, it's ridiculous. That's what I mean. Like, that's what you have to deal with out there. Especially if you're diving into the political spectrum, it's even more warped than it was 10 years ago. So, and it's only becoming more contorted. And so, our best advice for everyone is just to walk away from politics. Don't even engage in it, because if you engage in with any of these social justice warriors or anyone from left or right, it ends up in a stupid way, because, like you said, external forces are making people see the world with a very narrow perspective.
Yeah.
And they're not even aware that that's happening to them, right? That they're seeing the world with a narrow perspective. You always have to have an open consciousness to allow things to come in, and to, you know, and whatever it is, you'll filter it out, whether, you know, however you see it, you know what I mean? But you won't be looking at the world like this, you know. So once you're looking at the world like this, you're already gone, because you can't be objective. You can't be in the other person's shoes, you know. You can't speak about things in a correct way. So, and that's exactly what Kali Yuga is, right? Like, it's complete insanity.
When you look at that side of our world now, I can see why it's just beginning of.
Yeah, just the beginning of. Yeah,
it is going down. I don't want to see the bottom of it. Definitely not.
No.
But it seems like the world is getting ever crazier every day, and the opinions and ideas get more complicated and diverted every day. And yeah, it's hard to get genuine opinion.
Well, it's like what you were saying before, right? Like, life's getting more convenient. So this would be the argument for most people who talk about Kali Yuga. And we agree. Life is more convenient. We can go to the supermarket. You can get all the food in the world. Your ability to survive is a lot higher than it was 1,000 years ago. We can enjoy this podcast together with all the amazing people watching and listening. You know, we have all of these luxuries, right, in this day and age. But in saying that, the more convenient it becomes, the more asleep a lot of people, the more tired people become consciously. So, for example, like 1,000 years ago, you know, you probably had to let's take it back even further. Let's go back to the time of the Buddha and Lao Tzu and Confucius and that 2,500 period, 2,500 years ago period. So about 500 BC, 600 to 500 or 400 BCE, in that 200-year period, where there was a real boom and the understanding of consciousness, and that Pythagoras existed in that time as well. And so you have this massive boom at that period of time. And how did that happen? You know what I mean? It didn't happen through a lot of people chowing down food on the couch watching Netflix, you know. So it came through an environment where, you mentioned innocence before, where the environment was a lot more innocent, where, you know, people were hardworking but honest and tried to take care of each other as much as possible, because their life depended on other people being healthy as well. So if you were the farmer next door and someone else was this farmer, if both of you are not healthy, I'm not healthy. So you have to take care of the whole community, see? And so what's happening with convenience, comfortability and convenience, is we're not taking care of the whole community anymore because we don't have to. I can sit here on the couch and just mooch food all day, and I don't even know my neighbor and could care less about his well-being, right? This could be my mentality. And so then what happens? You become insensitive to other people, and then you start like making these artificial boundaries through religion, race, you know, gender, and so forth, nations. And these artificial boundaries don't exist. We are all one, but you make up these boundaries because you're living your isolated life as an individual, and you could care less about what's happening down the road because it doesn't matter anymore. That guy can be homeless on the street, you could care less because it doesn't impact your life. But if there was a homeless guy in the community 1,000 years ago, he was another set of hands that people could, that we would need, right? So him being healthy was very important, because if we had to plow the field and this and that, and there was only
the people,
we need people, right? So
yeah, the sense of unity and sense of like depending on each other back in those days were much more obvious and much more like it was just right there, right? Just next door neighbor that you see every day, every moment of your life, basically. But yeah, that is right. We don't have to depend on our next door neighbor anymore. We can just order food off apps, and it's at your door in half an hour or whatnot, and all that. And so you don't really need to rely on your neighbors per se. But I still think that there is a mutual dependency in people who still exist today. We just don't see it that way anymore, I think.
Yeah.
For example, like now we are living in pandemic still, right? So how is the world going? Everyone's going kind of crazy, right? People suffer from depression-like symptoms, and their family gets torn apart because of financial reasons and whatnot, and people losing jobs and things like that. That's all because we are dependent on each other.
Yeah, for sure.
If we're not dependent on each other, none of this will happen. And that means that's how much we are actually connected with each other. And the problem is, in the name of convenience, we get to live our life without much problem. It kind of covers it over so that prevent us to see it that way, right? So there is that dependency. Is there? Okay, not as much as 2,500 years ago. Yes, because now world became much more complex. There are way more people on the planet, so social dynamics is completely different. But there is that mutual dependency and connection is there, and no matter how much people want to deny it, that's true.
It is. And it's interesting that because we're not realizing that, it's funny, like, because with more comfortability and convenience, there's more homeless people in the world. There's more of these things that, because we're not just taking care of each other, right? Like you look at the state of Los Angeles at the moment, it's basically a tent city, right? Like, and that's because we just don't look after each other. And I know that may start at a governmental level in America, but it's just to highlight what we're talking about. Whereas in the old days, we wouldn't allow that to happen, because again, it's another set of hands that we can use, and so forth and so on. So, and the benefit of your health helps my health as well. Now, you may say that that's self-interested, but it's just a survival mentality. Like, it's about just getting along and getting on with it. You know what I mean? We're not here to analyze the psychology behind it. It's about just surviving and getting on with life. And in those communities, we see this a lot in rural Asia, right? Like where that mentality still exists, and the people are still really innocent, right? Like they're not polluted by smartphones and external influence like that. So, and like if we look at places such as America, like where a lot of opinions and agendas and that proliferate the whole community, then you see a disharmonic society, as what we're seeing right now, right? Like a bit of pressure comes from the pandemic, and people lose their crap, and then they start to join fake groups, like, and are causing trouble within the community. When this is a time when it should galvanize the population. We've seen this a lot, especially in African and Asian countries and some South American countries where the pandemic has actually galvanized the community, even though the community was probably more galvanized than somewhere such as America. But you see that, right? Instead of fighting each other, like, which is kind of a strange thing to do, like, shouldn't we just be trying to get through this together and working to survive this situation? But again, that's just Kali consciousness. It's about not understanding that the health of yourself is dependent on the health of other people. And it can even be more so now, actually. Like you said, like, we don't see the farmers, we don't see the transport people who drive the food to the supermarkets. A lot of people don't even say hello to the cashiers in the supermarkets anymore. Well, half the time we're dealing with robots, but like machines. And then, but without any of those people, you don't get food in the shelves. Good luck finding a carrot in the city or something like that. You know what I mean? Like if there's none on the supermarket shelves. So we almost depend on each other more so now than in the ancient times. It was just more on your face in the ancient times. Here, everything is, you don't see anything these days, right? Like, because, you don't see the guy who drives the produce from 2,000 kilometers away to your supermarket. So, but we always should be mindful that that's the case,
And I think what we need to realize is that as much as we want to defend this convenience that we have and material possessions and convenience and things like that, it definitely made our life much easier. But in the end, it actually worked against us. It creates more disharmony with one another. And we are a bit too spoiled, really, so that we don't. There's a lack of appreciation, and lack of appreciation leads to lack of care, and all these things, and machine and all the convenience that we have is there for us, but it's not for us to always defend, because it actually, in the end, I think it works against humanity in the end.
Yeah. For sure. So that's kind of like Kali consciousness, right? Like, well, everything we've been talking about, this kind of descent, and we're going further down. And so that's why it's important to come back into align with a lot of the especially the Eastern scriptures and teachings, to keep your general sanity and to enhance your spiritual process. I mean, the thing is that, what people, and you alluded to this before, is that there are still those with a Satya Yuga state of consciousness in the Kali Yuga, right? It may be us, maybe not, and a lot of people listening and watching, but some people still have that Satya Yuga consciousness where you're not attracted to he said, she said, or this gang and that gang. You're not even, it's none of your interest. Like, you're more interested in, well, your mind is more fixated on the oneness of reality and the ultimate reality, Brahman or Tao, Dharmakaya, call it what you will. And so we still exist in this age, and it's up to you to determine, like with everything we've been mentioning about the current state of affairs, whether we're in Kali Yuga or not. A lot of people would agree, some may disagree. It's either or. But what I want to speak about now is kind of the evolution out of the Kali Yuga. Like we're going to talk about like how the Kali Yuga is going to end, right? And so the idea here is that the Kali Yuga, I don't know when this would happen or what time frame, because we'd be just speculating. But there's kind of a change in the consciousness coming towards the end of the Kali Yuga, and then in the texts, in the Puranas, they talk about Kalki, right? The coming of the 10th avatar of Vishnu. And so, because, you had Buddha, and then you're going to have Kalki. And Kalki is going to come at the end of the Kali Yuga and usher in the Satya Yuga. So, to be clear, it's precisely the Kali Yuga. So, if we follow this time scale, the long scale, the Kali Yuga will end at 428,898 CE. So it's a fair way off.
Say again,
It will end at, like, if we're following our proper year.
So we are in 2021.
Yeah. So
okay,
yeah.
6 digits only.
Yeah.
We are 4 digits only.
Yeah, you're only 4 digits. Long way off. So we're a fair way to go. So, but like coming towards the end of that is like when Kalki apparently ushers in the Satya Yuga, the golden age. It's kind of similar to like Vyasa, right? Vyasa taking care of, like, Vyasa arises in the end of the Dwapara Yuga to leave the text behind for the Kali Yuga, and then you have Kalki, and there's nothing really after that. Like, there's no like 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th avatar, so to speak. So, and I guess because the knowledge is from where we sit right now, and so like like I mentioned before with the avatars, with the evolution of the avatars in relation to evolution itself, where Krishna brings in sort of like culture and stuff like that, the humanities and so forth, and then the Buddha brings in knowledge and spiritual inquiry, and then you have Kalki, right? And so Kalki, who knows what Kalki would represent, but it would represent whatever Kalki would represent some sort of unified state of consciousness, maybe. It's like what you mentioned before. I can't remember what you mentioned before. It was something in relation... Krishna. In relation to Krishna consciousness. Like, so there was that unified consciousness. And maybe Kalki is just a return to that at the end, towards the end of the Kali Yuga, people start to enhance more of that. Because we've went through the dog crap, for example, and we're out the other side in the sunshine and the rainbows. And then we have this unified state of consciousness, and then that ushers in the golden age.
So you're saying from Kali straight up to Satya?
Yeah. That's how they. It's not the like Sri Yukteswar's one where you have like a descent and this, and it's just like, well, I wouldn't say linear, but it's cyclical still. But like the Kali Yuga goes straight into Satya Yuga. So that's why Kalki ushers in the golden age. So it ushers in the Satya Yuga, the age of truth, I should say, the spiritual age. And so Kalki then, I mean, if you spoke to, it depends on what sort of Hindu you speak to. Like some Hindus would say that that's going to be a particular being, or that's going to be a particular state of consciousness, like how you were speaking about before of Krishna. So it depends on who you talk to about that, right? Like I don't want to say that one's right or wrong, but it depends on really who you're speaking to about that. So then Kalki will usher that in, and then that's when there's the full recognition that Atman is Brahman is common with most people. Actually, one of the things that I like in relation to what we're talking about is that at the end of the Dwapara Yuga, when we came into the Kali, was when Vyasa. So before the Kali Yuga, the Vedas were one.
Yeah.
They weren't dissected into 4 parts, and Vyasa made them 4 parts because of this state of consciousness. of humanity, right? So I guess the idea would be towards the end of the Kali Yuga, going into Satya Yuga, the Vedas again would become one, like, and that comes back to the understanding that Atman is Brahman, like, where the knowledge wouldn't have to be so complex and analytical to explain to a bunch of dummies, which is basically what has happened, right? Like, if we take the Yuga seriously, then a lot of the knowledge left behind from Vyasa is because he sort of understood that there's going to be a few dances around. So we need to sort of get walked
through.
Yeah, guided through understanding instead of like it being a felt experience already. Like you already knew Atman as Brahman. I didn't need to teach you that. Right?
Again, when ascending happens, that again heightened consciousness also saying the heightened intelligence as well, right?
Yeah.
So that probably coming back to unification of all these divided Vedas and
exactly.
all the other different knowledge and whatnot.
The buddhi is flowering.
Yeah.
The buddhi is flowering. You don't need to,
It seems like dormant at the moment, but it'll just come out and
Well, it's coming out of certain people, right? The buddhi is flowering, and it always will continue to. But it might be like what Gurdjieff spoke about, that organic reality needs, in some sense, some unconscious humans to take care of organic reality. And evolution of consciousness is only isolated to some people. Not that I agree with that, but you can kind of see Gurdjieff's point a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like, hence why only if some peculiar people are interested in spirituality, and why spirituality is slowly dying in the world, right? Religions are dying, and people are becoming more opinionated and individualistic, and I mean, we can't deny that, right? We see that everywhere.
Yeah, he's saying in a sense that if everyone was sitting down and really diving into deep in the philosophy every day, then who's gonna providing food back in the farm and things like that? I can see the point, but again, like I don't entirely agree with that because we will take care of our basic needs no matter what.
Yeah, for sure.
But just a level of consciousness and level of intelligence will be at a different level.
Well, I sort of take what he said as sort of an illustration, like of how it sort of generally is.
Yeah.
But like, I think it can be taken out of context because you might say people might think that you are actually saying that everyone is dumb, but you're not really saying that. You're just saying that people aren't. Well, Gurdjieff is saying that just a large portion of people are not interested in spirituality. It's just they're not interested in the internal way, and because their role is to take care of certain other things in reality. So
yeah, and also he says somewhat like it's not natural when majority of people are, let's say, enlightened at the same time.
No.
Everyone has their turn, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That I can agree with that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But you've only ever saw that, unless you take into consideration the Satya Yuga. But from everything that we've seen and the history that we know of, it's been that way. What you said, But if we take into consideration the Yugas and Satya Yuga, well, everyone was enlightened. Well, the idea of enlightenment doesn't exist because there's a complete recognition, a complete unification with Brahman. So, but you can see Gurdjieff's point. You know what I mean? And in all respects. So, the idea of Kalki is an interesting one because a lot of people have I've had this in the comment section a lot, not just with Hindus but also with foreigners who are interested in Hindu knowledge. That they have their own theory on what or who Kalki is, and
already mythologizing.
Already mythologizing and this and that. We humans, we have a bad tendency to do that, right?
We have too much imagination.
Too much imagination, instead of just like seeing how it will play out. So, but I really think that, like, I kind of resonate with what you were talking about before. It's a state of sort of consciousness that we come back into alignment with, which obviously if you start thinking with a unified state of consciousness, obviously it ushers in a golden age because you understand that everything is one. There would be no conflict. And this is actually just something that we can generally understand now, right? Like one of the things is that, like we can look at it two ways, right? Like you said before, that, and like what I get a lot, like people saying, oh, you just got to let Kali Yuga run its course. And it's like, I'm not arguing with you, but if we understand that the reality is truly one, why not just start now and because once you understand that, then there'll be peace.
Yeah, I mean that doesn't mean that you need to participate into this, Kali consciousness.
No, of course not.
You just do your part, or you just do what you feel is right thing to be doing, and if you enjoy and you love what you do, you just follow that.
Yeah. Again, if you are one that's come back into alignment with the Tao or with Brahman or with the oneness that is actually the fabric of reality, then that's all that has had to happen for your life.
That's it.
And because you are in that place, you are going to subtly influence someone else without you knowing it, and that's the benefit of it, right? Like we get a lot of wonderful comments from people about the podcast and about my other videos and that, and people saying like, you're helping thousands of people and this and that, and it's not that that's my intention at all. I just love this knowledge and I love sharing it.
Yeah.
And I'm just appreciative that some people out there actually enjoy.
Yeah.
And because those people enjoy, then and they benefit, then they actually benefit their immediate environment as well. So I don't think you have to think of it in the sense that we're doomed to like go down to the pits of hell. I think that there's a way of bringing a level of health and sanity to the world that is not determined by whether it's Kali Yuga or not, And again, like I want to stress to people, you don't have to believe in everything that we're talking about today. We're talking about the Yugas in an objective manner. So it's up to you to discern whether you agree with this system or not. This is the Hindu cosmology, and this is what Hindus follow. Sincere Hindus. And so, and it's highly fascinating, like when you get into his Hindu cosmology and astrology, like Jyotish astrology, and it's a really wonderful perspective of the world, and it does line up with science and a lot of other things. And so, like I said in the movie, I said Kalki could be you or it could be anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
It's up to you to embrace that state of consciousness.
Yeah, again, for Yuga system, that first thing I was so fascinated about is that the system itself, that the count itself is based on our heartbeat. So that's whether you want to say that's true or not. I mean, the system itself is true or not. What it is based on, it's so organic and so fundamental and basic that they're based on our human heartbeat. That's how they counted the years. Like
it's crazy, yeah.
That's why a little bit faster than our time system. We have linear time, minutes and hours and things like that. Yeah, so it's much more advanced technology they used based on our own biology. So that is why maybe someone like Carl Sagan found it so fascinating. And that's how I find also. And I think I heard this from Joseph Campbell, I think, as well. He said something like that about Yugas, it's based on heartbeat or something like that.
Yeah, Joe.
Yeah. And so, yes, it's, again, whether you want to believe it or not, it's totally up to you. But it's so convincing, and it's, yes, we can get a lot out of this knowledge.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why anyone wouldn't be curious about it, because it's ancient, and the knowledge is on point.
It gives you much bigger perspective in our lives. I actually think that directly, get in touch with your own life too.
Yeah.
Because once you have a heightened perspective, your immediate reality will change, right?
100%.
Yeah, that's how I see it. So beneficial.
Yeah, definitely. It's like one of our good friends out there, Ryan, and once I gave him a book. It was on the Yugas, but it was on like the short count system and this and that. But you know, he got into the long count and all that, and instantly he was sold. Oh, this just makes sense. So once you understand it at a deeper level, I hope we sort of give it justice here in the podcast and in my movies. But once you understand it at a deeper level, there's something about it. Like no matter whether you're a Hindu or whatever, there's something about it. Like and if you're really interested in it, I highly recommend it. Grabbing yourself the Vishnu and Bhagavata Purana, even if you want to check out, you know, obviously the Mahabharata and the Vedas, get your mind into this sort of understanding of the world. And also, if you're interested in the short count system, which we didn't cover here today, I highly recommend The Holy Science and also that book, The Yugas.
It's called The Yuga.
The Yugas, yeah, with Joseph Selby and David Steinmetz. And so, but yeah, it like, you know, if someone like Carl Sagan was interested in the Yugas, then that says a lot, right? Because he was pretty much a genius. So I hope we did it justice today. Anything more you want to add, love?
No, I think we nodded out pretty much everything.
All right, guys. One thing I wanted to mention before we go is that I have new merch out. Hope you guys go and check it out. The JG Shanti range.
Shanti.
And for Patreon, like we're trying to provide some more content for our patrons, just a token of our appreciation. So some behind the scene footage, maybe some things that I'm doing, like books I'm working on. It won't be like extensive. I'll be working within my means, so to speak, because we're going to be going full blast ahead with this channel. So if you're interested in Patreon, any small amount contribute to the channel really helps. As you guys know, I don't get loads of views and we don't have a massive channel. So I would highly appreciate any support that you could provide. But the best support that you can provide is liking each video and sharing the content. That's actually what's the most important. So if you listen this far, then I'm sure you're one of those people. So
thumbs up.
Thumbs up. So guys, thank you for watching and we'll see you guys next week.